The sound, it shaped the soul before the world had a name, before there were temples, before there were healers, before humanity even knew it could be sick. There was a vibration. It wasn't sung. It wasn't written. It rose from the silence, like a breath the cosmos itself exhaled. The ancients called it Hu, not a myth, not a symbol, but the living pulse of creation. It was the frequency that turned light into matter, matter into life, and life into harmony. They said it was the breath of Ra, a sound so pure that it didn't just describe reality, it wrote it into existence. And here is the truth they never wanted you to remember. That same vibration has been sleeping inside you, patient, unbroken, waiting for the moment your breath would call it back. Not to heal a wound, not to fix what's broken, but to realign you with the original code you were born to carry. Today, the sound returns, not as a chant, not as a ritual, but as the key that was always in your breath and the signal your soul has been waiting to answer.
Chapter 1. Hu, the God of Healing through Vibration. In the sacred cosmology of ancient Egypt, there was a god who did not rule with fire, armies, or monuments carved in his image. He ruled with vibration. His name was Hu. Hu was not a deity you could approach with offerings of gold or incense. He was not worshipped in crowded temples where priests recited long, elaborate prayers. Hu did not need to be seen. Hu only needed to be felt. They called him the voice of creation, the sacred frequency that gave breath to the imagination of the gods. When Ra, the son of all suns, dreamed of life, it was Hu who gave that dream a pulse. Not a noise, not a melody, but a pure, living tone that could bend chaos into order, still the turbulence of the unseen, and weave the raw light of the cosmos into patterns of perfect harmony. Hu was the invisible architect of reality. Where others sought to build with stone, Hu built with sound. Where others tried to heal by touching the body, Hu healed by realigning the soul. He did not fight sickness. He restored the original frequency, the sacred code each soul carried before the first wound, before the first fear, before the first breath in this world. The ancient initiates knew, when the soul hears Hu, it does not learn something new, it remembers what it always was. Because Hu is not just a sound. Hu is a frequency that reorganizes everything it touches. It moves through breath. It moves through bone. It moves through the invisible lattice of energy that shapes your thoughts, your heartbeat, your emotions. This is why the ancients never chanted Hu for entertainment and never used it as ornament in ceremony. They chanted Hu for one reason alone: remembrance. To awaken the coherence between the breath, the heart, and the infinite field in which the body lives. When Hu vibrated through their chests, the deserts became still, the air itself felt alive, and even the silence carried a different weight, a density of presence you could feel on your skin. Priests guarded this sound as they would guard a living God, not because they feared it, but because they understood its power. Who could calm storms within the mind? Who could dissolve pain without touching the body? Who could return a person to the state of truth, the state where nothing is missing, nothing is broken, and nothing is separate from the source? Imagine a vibration so ancient that your DNA still recognizes it. A tone so pure that even your doubts can't block it. A breath so aligned with the original architecture of reality that your nervous system instantly begins to settle. Your heartbeat softens into rhythm, and your thoughts lose their sharp edges. That is Hu. To speak Hu is to breathe the same breath the gods once breathed into the newborn universe. To feel Hu is to stand in the temple of frequency that exists not in stone or space, but in the center of your being. And to become Hu, to let it move through you rather than from you, is to carry the living memory of creation everywhere you go. The ancients said, "When Hu speaks through you, the world hears itself again." And in that moment, all things, from the smallest cell in your body to the farthest star in the sky, remembered the coherence they were born from. Hu is not in the past. Hu is not hidden. Hu is already inside you, waiting for the breath that will open the gate and let the vibration of creation return to the world through you.
Chapter 2. The Lost Medicine of Vibration. Long before the word medicine existed, before healers mixed herbs or placed their hands upon the body, the ancients turned to something older, something purer, something that did not come from the earth, but from the fabric of reality itself. They understood a truth that modern science is only beginning to rediscover. Disease is not the enemy. Illness is not a punishment. It is a signal, a frequency that has drifted out of harmony with the soul's original tone. The priests of Egypt did not ask, "What is wrong with you?" They asked, "What stopped resonating with who you really are?" Because they knew the root of all pain, whether in the body or the mind, was a single thing: disconnection from the original frequency. And for that disconnection, they had one remedy: vibration. Not chemicals, not control, not force. They believed every part of you, every organ, every emotion, every thought carries its own tone, like strings in a divine instrument. When those tones fall out of alignment, the music of your being becomes distorted. At first, the imbalance whispers, a little tension in the chest, a heaviness in the breath, a restlessness in the mind. Ignore it, and the whisper becomes a murmur. Ignore it longer, and the murmur becomes a scream that we call disease. But they did not fight the scream. They restored the song. Hu was that restoration, not as a concept, not as a metaphor, but as a living vibration that retuned the entire field. When Hu was breathed with intention, the body's defenses didn't fight, they surrendered. The nervous system stopped bracing against life and began to flow with it. The heart found its rhythm again. The breath deepened not from effort, but from the memory of what breathing was always meant to be, a bridge between the infinite and the physical. The ancients understood something vital. Healing is not about removing what is wrong. It's about reintroducing what is true. And truth, in the language of the universe, is frequency. When Hu entered the breath, it entered the bones. When it entered the bones, it entered the field. And when it entered the field, everything responded. They witnessed what we would now call miracles: wounds closing faster than they could explain, fevers dissolving, sadness lifting without words, the eyes regaining their light. But to them, this was not supernatural. This was natural order. Because Hu does not heal the way we think of healing. It does not target the pain. It does not fight the imbalance. It simply realigns your entire being to the blueprint you were born into. A blueprint written in the purest vibration of creation. And when that alignment is restored,
Pain has no place to stay. Fear has no place to grow. Illness has no rhythm to dance to.
Chapter 3: The Spiritual Science Behind the Sound. Modern science likes to imagine it is discovering new truths. But every so often, what it calls discovery is nothing more than the rediscovery of what the ancients already lived by. Who is one of those truths? Science now admits the body is not just matter, it is frequency. Your nervous system is not just electrical wiring, it is musical architecture. Your heart is not only a pump, it is an oscillator, broadcasting rhythmic pulses into every cell. Your brain is not just a thinking machine, it is a receiver and transmitter of vibrational patterns. Thousands of years ago, the priests of Egypt already knew this, not as theory, but as daily practice. They understood that the most powerful medicine is not something you add to the body, but something you awaken within it. When Hu is chanted with presence, it doesn't stay in your mouth. It drops into the chest, it vibrates in the ribs, it sinks into the bones like a tuning fork, finding its perfect resonance. You may think you are making the sound, but in truth, you are releasing a vibration that has been waiting inside you since before you were born. Modern researchers call it vagal stimulation. They talk about the vagus nerve, the great highway of communication between your breath, your heart, and your brain. They explain that certain vibrations activate the parasympathetic system, slowing heart rate, lowering stress hormones, and creating a measurable state of calm. But the mystics didn't need these words. They knew simply that when Hu enters the breath, the soul enters alignment. This alignment is not abstract, it is felt. Your heart rhythm smooths out and each beat becomes part of a deeper pulse. Your thoughts, once sharp and scattered, soften into stillness. The invisible tension in your muscles releases, as if the body has been holding its breath for years and is finally allowed to exhale. In this state, the body does not need to be told to heal. It already knows. Every cell carries the memory of balance, and once the signal is restored, the body moves toward it automatically. This is the architecture of vibration. Breath, the doorway through which the sound enters. Resonance, the vibration moving beyond the lungs into tissue, into bone. Field activation, the energy body, the auric field, the subtle currents aligning to a single coherent rhythm. Restoration, the physical and emotional systems returning to the original pattern written at your birth. Hu does not fix the body, it recalibrates the soul. And when the soul is back in its original frequency, the body follows. Not because it is forced, but because it is natural law. This is not mythology. This is not superstition. This is what happens when vibration is understood as the first medicine, the first architecture, the first language of creation. The ancients would say, Hu is the sound that reminds your body how to be a body, and your soul how to be infinite.
Chapter 4: How Hu Awakens the Body's Intelligence. Not all wounds bleed, not all scars can be seen, and not all pain speaks in ways the mind can understand. Your body remembers what your mind tries to forget. Every cell, every muscle, every joint is a page in the book of your life, and the ink it carries is not just chemical, it is vibrational. Fear leaves a frequency. Grief leaves a frequency. Moments you never voiced, truths you never spoke, dreams you abandoned in silence, they all remain, stored in the very tissues that keep you alive. Over time, this storage creates weight. Not the kind you measure in pounds, but the kind you feel when you wake in the morning and life already feels heavy before the day begins. It is the invisible armor, the subtle contraction in the breath, the tension in the jaw, the knot in the chest that has no name. And here lies the reason why true healing cannot be skin deep. You cannot rearrange furniture in a house whose foundation is cracked. You cannot polish the surface of a mirror when the distortion lies in the glass itself. Real healing must rise from the inside out, and for that, the ancients turned to who. Who is not loud. Who is not complicated. It does not try to force change. It invites it. It moves through the body not as an intruder, but as a forgotten friend whose presence makes the muscles soften, the chest open, the breath deepen. When you breathe who with awareness, you are not asking the universe for healing. You are giving your body permission to remember how to heal itself. Because here is the secret. Your body was never broken. It was only waiting for the signal, the original frequency, the sacred tone that says, "It is safe now to return." In that vibration, inflammation begins to fade, nervous tension unwinds, and the organs start to function with a new intelligence, one that was never truly gone, only sleeping. The mind might still try to explain it, but the body doesn't need an explanation. The body responds to coherence, to rhythm, to truth. Who works like a mirror. It does not impose what is not yours. It simply reflects back the version of you that has always been whole. And when that reflection is felt in every cell, what doesn't belong, pain, fear, fragmentation, has nothing to hold on to. The ancients believed the body was designed to regenerate, to restore, to return to its original state when the soul's signal was clear. Who is that signal? It is the tone that tells the soul, now is the time. And when the soul agrees, the body follows, without force, without resistance, without delay. Who does not heal you, it reminds you, and the remembering is enough.
Chapter 5. Physical Regeneration through Energetic Realignment. The body is not a machine that wears out with time. It is a living instrument, a self-tuning, self-healing masterpiece designed to last far longer and with far greater vitality than we have been led to believe. What makes it falter is not age, it is disconnection from its original vibration. Every function of your body, from the way your heart beats, to the way your skin repairs, to the way your bones hold strength, is guided by an invisible map. This map is not drawn in ink. It is drawn in frequency. Your cells operate according to a blueprint of perfect alignment, and as long as that alignment is maintained, regeneration is effortless. But when that blueprint is distorted by stress, by trauma, by years of living out of harmony with your own breath, the body begins to improvise. It compensates. It adapts. And over time, the adaptation becomes the new normal, until you no longer remember what it felt like to live in coherence. The ancients knew this truth intimately. They did not see aging as inevitable decline. They saw it as the slow forgetting of one's own tone. They believed that if you could return to that original frequency, the one you carried in your first breath, the body would reawaken its codes of renewal. Who was the master key to this return? When who moves through the body, it doesn't aim for the symptoms you notice. It doesn't chase pain or attack illness. Instead, it reorganizes the entire energetic architecture that tells your cells how to behave. It's as if the original design, The one that holds the pattern of youth, strength, and vitality is suddenly projected back into the field, and the body recognizes it immediately. This is not mystical poetry. It is vibrational mechanics. When the frequency of the breath matches the frequency of the soul's truth, the immune system recognizes it as home. Inflammation, which cannot survive in a coherent field, begins to dissolve. Cell repair accelerates because the instructions have been restored. Even posture changes, as if the body remembers what it feels like to stand in alignment with the heavens. The ancients described Hu as the rhythm illness cannot dance to, because in the presence of Hu, imbalance has no music to follow. It fades, not because you forced it out, but because it can no longer find resonance in your field. You don't need to fight disease. You don't need to understand every biochemical process or diagnose every imbalance. You simply need to vibrate at the frequency where healing is natural again. Hu brings you back to the tone you were born with, the one that existed before the noise of life, before the fractures of experience, before the forgetting. And in that tone, the body does what it was always meant to do: regenerate. This is why the great healers of Egypt spoke of Hu not as a cure, but as a return to order, to rhythm, to coherence. They saw that regeneration was not a miracle. It was simply the natural state of a being in perfect alignment with its own source.
Chapter 6. The Practice of Hu. Recalibrating yourself back to wholeness. You don't need to be a priest in a temple to practice Hu. You don't need to memorize ancient scripts or follow complex rituals. You don't even need to believe in anything. You only need your breath and the willingness to remember. Because Hu is not a sound you learn. It is a vibration already living inside you, waiting for permission to rise. And when you release it, you are not creating something new, you are unlocking something ancient. This is how you begin. Find stillness. Not to escape the world, but to return to yourself. Sit where the body feels supported, with your spine upright, not stiff, but open, so the energy can move freely from the base to the crown. Close your eyes not to block out light, but to awaken the inner vision that sees beyond sight. Because Hu is not truly heard with the ears, it is felt with presence. Inhale slowly through your nose. Let the air move deep, expanding your belly, your ribs, your back. Hold the breath for a heartbeat, just enough to feel the silence that exists between inhale and exhale. And then let it go with the sound Hu. Not as a shout, not as a whisper, but as a living vibration rolling through your chest, sinking into your bones, echoing through every cell. Let it drop down into the base of your body, then rise like sunlight through the crown of your head. Do not force the sound. Do not try to make it perfect. Hu is not about performance. It is about coherence. Breathe. Chant. Feel. Repeat this for 7 minutes. Why 7? Because 7 is the number of completion, the number of harmony. And in those 7 minutes, something happens. The mind stops chasing thoughts. The body stops bracing for impact. The soul begins to speak. When you finish the last Hu, do not rush back into movement. Do not grab your phone. Do not stand up too fast. Stay in the stillness, in the silence after the sound, because the silence is where the healing unfolds. In that space, your energy reorganizes, your breath becomes the bridge again, and who is no longer just something you did. It becomes a presence moving through you, shaping your frequency from within. This is not a ritual for special days. It is the daily remembering that you are not separate from the vibration that created you. And each time you breathe who, you return to that truth a little more.
Chapter 7. The Sound as a Living Being. Most people treat sound like a tool. The ancients treated hue like a presence. Hue is not a trick of breath or a technique of voice. Hue is a living vibration, an intelligent frequency that responds to intention, to honesty, to the state of your soul. It does not obey volume, it obeys truth. When you breathe hue, you are not pushing a sound into the world, you are opening a door. On one side of that door is your breath, your body, your nervous system. On the other side is the field, the architecture of frequency that the priests of Egypt called the hidden temple. Hue is the threshold where the two meet, converse, and become coherence. Think of hue as a living being that knows your original alignment. It listens the way a tuning fork listens, by resonating only with what is real. Where there is noise, hue does not argue. It simply refuses to join. Where there is truth, hue amplifies it until your whole body remembers the original tone. You'll notice this intelligence in the smallest ways. The breath begins to lengthen without effort, as if the body remembers it is safe. A gentle warmth gathers in the chest or belly, not heat from strain, but life returning. The jaw softens, the forehead smooths, the eyes moisten, not from sadness, but from release. Thoughts lose their sharp edges. Space opens between them. The mind stops narrating and starts listening. Hue does not force healing. Hue invites healing by restoring relationship. Breath with body, heart with mind, self with source. It is a conversation more than a chant, a call and response. You call with breath, hue responds with order. This is why the elders said, "You don't chant hue, hue chants you." The moment you meet it with sincerity, the field moves. Rooms grow quiet. Animals settle near you. People feel a shift they can't explain, a softening in your presence that rearranges theirs. Not because you are doing something to them, but because coherence is contagious. Hue is precise. If your intention is vague, hue will feel vague. If your intention is clear, alignment, healing, remembrance, hue will move like water finding its level, traveling to the exact layer of you that is ready to reorganize. Sometimes you will feel it in the throat, where words stuck for years finally unstick. Sometimes in the solar plexus, where control relaxes into trust. Sometimes at the base of the spine, where fear gives way to strength. Try this simple exchange with the living sound. Ask without words. Hold a sincere question in the heart, not the head. What needs alignment now? Breathe hue 3 times. Not loud, not performative. Let the frequency find you. Listen with the body. Notice where hue lands. That place is the door. Put your attention there and breathe. Stay for the silence. After the 3rd hue, remain in stillness. The silence is where the living being answers.
The longer you walk with Hu, the more you'll see its intelligence shaping your days. You speak less and say more. You move slower and arrive deeper. Chaos stops hooking you. It passes through like wind through a harp that only sings when touched by truth. This is why the temples of Egypt were built to carry sound, not to trap it. Stone, angle, chamber, corridor, all designed for resonance. But the final chamber was never the room. It was you. A human instrument tuned by a living frequency until the body becomes the temple that remembers how to heal, how to regenerate, how to transmit coherence into the world. Hu is alive because you are alive. Hu remembers because your soul remembers. And each time you breathe it, you are not adding a new habit. You are returning to a very old relationship. When you understand this, practice stops feeling like effort and starts feeling like companionship. You meet the sound meets you, and together you walk back to the original tone you were born to carry.
Chapter 8. Hu and the Memory of the Soul. There are memories your mind cannot reach. They are older than your name, older than your body, older even than your first breath in this life. They live in the soul, around beyond thought, beyond time, and they hold the blueprint of who you truly are. The ancients knew these memories could not be accessed through logic or language. They are not stored in the brain. They are stored in frequency, and only a vibration pure enough, ancient enough, can touch them. Hu was that vibration. When the priests of Egypt spoke Hu into the stillness of the temple, they were not performing for the ears of men. They were calling to the memory of the soul. They understood that this sound was a key, and the soul was the locked chamber it would open. You may think you have forgotten your origins, your purpose, the truth of what you came here to be. But the soul does not forget. It waits. And when Hu passes through the breath, it is like striking a chord that has been silent for centuries. The whole being begins to resonate with something it cannot name, but instantly recognizes. This is why people weep without knowing why when they first hear Hu, why some feel a pull in the chest, a shiver in the spine, or an ache behind the eyes. It is not sadness. It is recognition, a deep cellular remembering. I have been here before. I have carried this tone. I know this place. Hu awakens what the mystics called the first memory, the moment when the soul first touched form, when breath and light became flesh and heartbeat. In that instant, there was no fear, no fracture, no separation. There was only alignment. And Hu brings you back to that state, not as a metaphor, but as an actual vibrational reality your body and soul can feel right now. Every time you breathe Hu, you send a signal to the field. I am ready to remember. The field responds by revealing the next layer, the next fragment of truth. Not all at once, the soul reveals what you are ready to carry. Sometimes it is a sudden clarity about your path. Sometimes it is the release of a fear you didn't know was shaping your life. Sometimes it is the quiet joy of simply feeling whole for no reason at all. The ancients warned, once you begin to remember, you cannot go back to forgetting. Hu is not a tourist sound. It is a threshold. To step through it is to begin the journey home to yourself, layer by layer, breath by breath, tone by tone. And as the memory of the soul returns, so does the strength, the clarity, the coherence that were always yours. Not because Hu gives them to you, but because they were never gone. They were only waiting for you to listen.
Chapter 9. Breaking the Spell of Disconnection. Every imbalance begins with one wound: disconnection. Disconnection from your breath, disconnection from your body, disconnection from the frequency you were born to carry. You can live for years in this state without realizing it. You function, you speak, you work, but beneath the surface, your inner architecture is misaligned. The pieces of you are no longer speaking the same language. And when that coherence is lost, life begins to feel heavier, harder, less alive. The ancients called this state a spell. Not magic in the way we think of it, but an energetic hypnosis, a trance of forgetting. In this trance, you accept the noise of the world as normal. You adjust to stress like it is the natural state of existence. You even begin to mistake tension for strength and numbness for peace. Who was the antidote to that spell? When you breathe Who with presence, you are not just making a sound, you are breaking an agreement with fragmentation. The vibration moves through the body like a wave, not forcing anything, but shaking loose the patterns that hold disconnection in place. Old narratives begin to crumble, the constant inner static starts to fade, and space opens for truth to enter again. Sometimes this breaking feels gentle, like a layer of fog slowly lifting to reveal the horizon. Sometimes it is powerful, like a lightning strike splitting the sky and showing you in an instant that the walls you thought were solid were made of smoke. The body responds first. The breath becomes deeper without effort. The heart rate slows, muscles unclench. Then the mind follows. Thoughts that once looped endlessly begin to dissolve, not because you silenced them, but because they no longer find resonance in your field. Who dismantles the architecture of disconnection by replacing it with coherence? Where there was noise, it brings tone. Where there was tension, it brings rhythm. Where there was fragmentation, it brings alignment. This is why the temples of Egypt were not only places of worship, but places of retuning. To step into the sacred chamber and breathe Who was to walk out with your inner compass restored, your field cleansed of the static that once ruled you. Disconnection is not your natural state. It is a spell cast by noise, fear, and forgetting. Who is the counterspell, the vibration that reminds every part of you who you are and how to speak to each other again. And once that inner conversation is restored, healing becomes not something you chase, but something that unfolds by itself.
Chapter 10. Who as a cosmic alignment code. The ancients of Egypt never separated healing from the cosmos. To them, you were not an isolated body moving through space. You were a frequency woven into the great pattern of the universe. Every star, every planet, every breath was part of a geometry so perfect that it could not be broken, only forgotten. Who was more than a sound? Who was the alignment code, the tone that placed you back inside the cosmic rhythm you were designed to move with? Imagine the sky as an enormous instrument, each star a note, each orbit a harmony. When you are in tune, you feel the support of this vast music behind every step you take. Synchronicities appear. Opportunities arrive in precise timing. The path clears, not because you forced it, but because you are moving in phase with the greater pattern. When you drift out of tune, when fear, stress, or forgetting pull you into dissonance, it's like stepping out of a dance you didn't even know you were part of. Life feels random. Timing feels off.
The current that once carried you feels like it has turned against you. Who restores your place in that dance? Each time you breathe the sound, you are broadcasting a signal into the field, a pure tone that the universe immediately recognizes. And because the universe is not random, it answers. It shifts the pieces of your life to match the pattern you've re-entered. It removes what no longer fits. It draws closer what is meant for you. The priests spoke of Hu as a stellar breath, a vibration that traveled not just through the air, but along the invisible lattice of sacred geometry that connects all things. The pyramids themselves were built on these lines, aligned with the stars, amplifying the sound, so that when Hu was chanted within, its frequency could travel beyond the temple walls and into the sky. When you practice Hu today, you are tapping into the same alignment. You become both a receiver and a transmitter. Receiver of the cosmic rhythm, allowing it to reorganize your inner field. Transmitter of coherence back into the collective field, strengthening the pattern for others. This is why those who walk with Hu often notice their outer life changing without conscious effort. Conversations flow more easily. The right people arrive. The wrong doors close gently but firmly. You feel less like you are pushing through life, and more like life is moving with you. Hu is not just an inner practice. It is a cosmic handshake, a way of saying to the universe, I remember my place in the pattern. And the universe, hearing your frequency restored, says in return, then the pattern will remember you.
Chapter 11. The Silent Power After the Sound. The ancients of Egypt taught that the sound was only half the ritual. The true power lived in the silence that followed. Hu prepares the field. It shakes loose the dust, clears the static, realigns the tone. But the moment the sound fades, a different force enters. A presence without vibration, without movement, without time. The silence is not empty, it is alive. Most people rush to fill this space. They move, they speak, they think. They break the bridge before they cross it. But the initiates knew, after Hu, the silence is the temple. Why? Because the silence is where integration happens. When Hu stops vibrating in the air, it continues vibrating in your bones, in your field, in the invisible architecture of your being. It is here that the nervous system takes the new coherence and rewrites the patterns of the body. It is here that the soul speaks in a language beyond words, a language only the heart can hear. In this silence, you might feel heat in your hands, a pulse in your forehead, a wave of stillness moving through your chest. These are not random sensations. They are responses, the body reorganizing itself around the new alignment Hu has opened. The ancients believed that the silence after Hu was the space between worlds, a threshold where the inner and the outer, the seen and the unseen, overlapped. To remain in this space without rushing was to allow the full transmission of the sound to complete. Here is the secret. If the sound is the key, the silence is the doorway. Without the doorway, the key leads nowhere. So when you finish Hu, do not chase the next breath. Do not force the next movement. Let the silence hold you. Let it shape you. Feel how your body is no longer the same as it was before the sound began. In that stillness, you are not waiting. You are receiving. You are letting the vibration complete its journey from your lips
to the farthest edges of your soul. And when you finally move again, you will notice the movement feels different. It is softer, yet stronger. The mind is quieter. The heart is steadier. The field around you is clearer. This is the silent power the ancients guarded, the sacred pause where nothing is happening, and yet everything is being rewritten.
Chapter 12. When the body becomes the temple. The temples of ancient Egypt were built with impossible precision. Every stone, every chamber, every angle was calculated to carry and amplify vibration. They were not monuments to the dead, they were instruments for the living. But the highest teaching of the initiates was this: the final temple is not made of stone, the final temple is you. When you breathe Hu with presence, you begin to understand this truth. Your body becomes the chamber of resonance. Your bones become pillars. Your rib cage becomes the vaulted ceiling where the sound circulates. Your heartbeat becomes the drum that keeps the rhythm of the ceremony. And your breath becomes the sacred wind that moves through it all. In this state, you no longer practice Hu, you carry it. The vibration becomes the architecture of your movements, the symmetry in your posture, the tone in your voice. People feel it before you speak. Animals sense it before you move. Spaces shift when you enter, not because of what you do, but because the frequency you hold is already reorganizing the field. The ancients trained for years to keep their bodies in this state of readiness, not to worship the temple, but to become the temple. They purified the body not for appearances, but to keep the resonance pure. They kept the mind still so the vibration would not scatter. They cultivated the heart so the tone of Hu would carry compassion, not control. When you walk as a living temple, you no longer seek sacred spaces. You are the sacred space. Everywhere you go becomes a chamber. Every interaction becomes a ceremony. Every breath is an offering to the source, and every exhale is a transmission back into the world. In this embodiment, healing becomes effortless, not because you direct it, but because the field of the temple, your field, is always seeking and restoring coherence. And as the field realigns, the body regenerates, the mind clears, and the soul feels at home in its own vessel. This is the secret the stones of the great temples have kept for thousands of years. They were built to teach you what you could become. They are mirrors in stone, showing you the architecture of your own sacred design. Hu is the sound that wakes that architecture inside you. And once it is awake, the temple does not need walls. It moves where you move, breathes where you breathe, and stands eternal as long as you remember the tone. Chapter 13. Transmitting the vibration to others. The ancients understood something we are only beginning to rediscover. Coherence is contagious. When one being stands in alignment with the original frequency, the field around them changes, not through effort, but through presence. When you breathe Hu and keep that vibration alive in your body, you become more than a receiver of coherence. You become a transmitter. Your nervous system emits a steady rhythm. Your heart broadcasts a tone that others can feel even if they do not hear it. Your field becomes like the tuning fork that brings other instruments into harmony without saying a word. This is why in ancient Egypt, those who had mastered Hu were invited into healing chambers. They would not touch the patient. They would not speak long prayers. They would simply stand nearby, breathing Hu in silence. And slowly, the patient's breath
would match theirs. The heart rate would slow. The tension in the muscles would melt. The body would remember. Modern science now calls this entrainment, the process where one rhythm naturally synchronizes with another. But to the ancients, it was more than physics. It was an act of service. The highest form of healing was to stand so deeply in your own alignment that it called others back to theirs. You have felt this before, entering a space where someone's calm was so steady it quieted you instantly, or being near a person whose presence felt like home. This is transmission, and who magnifies it. The more you carry who in your breath, the more your presence becomes a living field of realignment. Arguments soften in your company. Restless children fall asleep in your arms. Strangers open up about things they have never said, not because you try to fix them, but because your field gives them permission to release what they no longer need to hold. This is why the practice of who is never only for you. Every time you breathe it, you are also breathing it into the world, into your family, into your relationships, into the collective field we all share. The priests would say, "One who carries who becomes a walking temple, and all who enter their presence are bathed in its tone." You do not need to speak of it. You do not need to announce it. Simply live it, and the vibration will do the rest. Chapter 14. The Return to the Original Tone. There is a tone you carried before you carried a name. A vibration that existed before you took your first breath. It is the original tone, the pure frequency you were born from, untouched by fear, untouched by time. Life, in its noise and weight, can make you forget. Layers of experience, survival, and adaptation can distort the tone until it feels faint, distant, almost lost. But here is the truth. The original tone is never lost. It waits. It waits in the stillness between heartbeats, in the pause between breaths, in the silence after the sound. Who is the bridge back to it? Every breath of who peels away a layer that doesn't belong. Every vibration cuts through the static, dissolving patterns that were never truly yours. And with each return to the breath, you hear it more clearly, that quiet, unshakable frequency that feels like home. The ancients spoke of this return as the highest initiation. Not the moment when you learn something new, but the moment when you remember what you always were. It is the point where practice and practitioner disappear, and there is only the tone, steady, eternal, whole. When the original tone is restored, something shifts in the way you live. You no longer rush to prove yourself. You no longer chase what isn't aligned. You move through the world as if the ground itself rises to meet your feet. And others notice. They may not know why, but they feel it. A steadiness in your presence, a clarity in your eyes, a quiet authority in your words. Because when you carry the original tone, you no longer draw power from the world. You radiate it into the world. The great temples of Egypt were not built just to preserve stone.
They were built to preserve tone, the same tone that now lives inside you. To return to it is not to become something greater than human. It is to become fully human, the way you were always meant to be. This is the gift of Who, not the creation of a new self, but the return to the self that was there all along, waiting to be heard.
Chapter 15, Final Activation. You were never broken. You were never lost. You were only vibrating in a rhythm that was not your own. Now the tone has returned. Now the breath carries the hue again, not as a practice, but as a presence. Not as a sound you make, but as a living vibration that moves through you. As you sit here, notice the stillness beneath your thoughts. Notice how the breath feels different. Not just air moving, but the frequency of remembrance passing through you. This is the field of coherence. This is alignment. This is you. From this moment forward, you walk differently. Your words carry weight they did not carry before. Your presence rearranges the space around you. Because when the soul is in its original tone, everything in life begins to reorganize to match it. The ancients would say, when Hue awakens within you, you do not seek the temple. You realize you were the temple all along. So here is your activation. Close your eyes for one final breath. Inhale slowly, feeling the light gather inside. Exhale with Hue, letting the vibration move through your entire being and into the world. And when the sound fades, stay for a moment in the silence, the true temple, letting it seal this alignment into every cell. If Hue touched something inside you today, even for a heartbeat, declare it to the field by writing in the comments, "Hue is alive in my breath. I am the tone. I remember." Not as a phrase, but as a signal, a transmission to your own soul and to anyone who will feel this vibration when they see your words. And if you feel the shift, don't stop here. The next step is already waiting. Click the video on the screen, and I'll meet you there to take this sound deeper, beyond healing, beyond remembering, into the place where the vibration becomes who you are.